Good morning, everyone, and namaste from India. My name is Sushant, and today we'll be discussing a little bit about how artificial intelligence can be used for sustainability problem solving. And along with Professor Taylor, we have come up with the framework that can help for sustainability practitioners. So let's dive in. Uh, for the overall presentation, the work that we have done, we have segmented into different sections, as you can see. We'll briefly talk about why we have come up with this model that will be under introduction. Then we'll discuss a little bit about sustainability as decision intelligence, why this is critical. And then we are focusing more around AI augmented professionals, how AI and sustainability professionals can come together and then fill the gaps that we have. And for that, to achieve that, we have developed a framework. And how the framework can be operationalized, that we will cover. Of course, when we propose something new, and we are talking about cutting edge technologies, tools, and practices, definitely what skills are required, we will also discuss. And then how the capability development model will work, that we have been thinking and designing in a workshop format that we will be covering, like how the workshop will look like. And the most important part for all of us is like when we develop any kind of AI tools or solution, the context is critical. Since we are in Vietnam, so I thought maybe the context of Vietnam will help here to understand everybody how this will be helpful, and moreover, governance and ethics aspect, and finally, conclusion and future. So let's start. So I think most of us, we are aware of sustainability challenges in terms of domain perspective, like what are the sustainability related challenges we are experiencing, whether it's a climate change, whether it's flooding, whether it's heat. I think we both in India and Vietnam, we both are experiencing maybe heat, and so on. There are so many other things. Uh, Whatever these kind of events happen, eventually it generates a lot of data, whether it's coming from satellite images or scientists go and do some research and collect data and all. So definitely it generates a lot of data. And the data is like in diverse nature, right? Like it's a natural event. Then we do some sampling, whether it's a core sampling, whether some survey samples, or whether collecting using some hand-tooled devices, or whether it's a remote sensing images or drone, even drone we are using. And collectively, we all are aware that due to various climatic changes impact, there are like billions of people on this earth are actually highly vulnerable to that. And when I say vulnerable to that, that means like they are susceptible to be impacted more than the rest of the population. So in order to do the climate adaptation, what is critical, of course, there are policies being implemented. There are countries signing some commitment that, okay, we will work on it. But at the same time, the critical part is the workforce. And with the change in the client, at the same time, change in the technological space, there is a dual capability gap. So if we take two world, sustainability practitioners, and then the AI world, where AI professionals are working, there is a lack of confidence, I would say, in terms of being enabled, AI enabled among practitioners. Maybe it could be because of, okay, this is a very high advanced kind of a tool. We may not be able to use it. I'm not generalizing it, but yeah, it happens. At the same time, the technologies, they lack understanding of the domain aspect of it, like how the environmental system works, how climate change is being actually impacted, what is triggering, and some other governance aspect. So this disconnect is actually uh, creating another problem, because we have experts from technology, we have experts from sustainability practitioners, but we don't have a lot of experts, many experts who actually work in this section. So Professor Taylor and I have been working in this space for a long time, and we have designed a few, you can say, courses. Then we have been also working on the several collaborative research works. I think Professor Taylor is also doing some ground research in that area, and maybe he'll be also talking about it later. Then with the development in the AI space, for example, now we all must be aware of ChatGPT, which is like one of the products of generative AI tool. Then we have geospatial analytics, where we require a lot of remote sensing data and maybe drone data or any other images. And then we kind of like combine them and try to make sense, but that requires a lot of skills and practices and all. Then there are several models available, but it is possible that we may have several resources available, but we may not be well equipped to actually use them appropriately. So key proposal with this talk is the AI augmented sustainability intelligence framework that we have developed, and how the practitioner can be enabled for that. So as I mentioned in the agenda slides, I like sustainability as decision intelligence, and briefly I talked about sustainability challenges. Now, to be a little bit more focused, so that we all remember that what are the different dimensions of sustainability when we talk about it as a decision intelligence. So I have already mentioned that it's large scale heterogeneous data sets that we have, whether it's coming from satellite and so on. Then there are certain uncertainty involved with this. All the data and the systems are interconnected and so on. But how AI can enhance decision support, whether through predictive analytics, whether evidence-based synthesis, or spatial related or scenario modeling, like very specific, and risk communication, how we communicate to policy makers so that they can come up with some environmental management guidelines or policy guidelines, and that can be implemented whether within the local context, maybe regional, national, and international. And that's why there is a shift to intelligence to drive ecosystem. So we have to move from static compliance and delayed assessments to continuous interpretation of dynamic information streams without compromising the governance and policy aspects of it. And you can all consider like all kinds of place-based use cases like flood and biodiversity degradation, urban heat, and so on. Now, the emerging AI augmented sustainability professionals, they require environmental managers. They also do ESG reporting. Then they are also looking for AI-enabled decision support system. And if we kind of like club them into 3 professional archetypes, you can consider like one maybe who is building the AI solutions, like the AI builders, and someone who is translating that AI solutions to the problem, and finally governing the overall AI system that we build. And collectively, that brings us several opportunities. For example, we may need climate analysts, we may need resilience planners, we definitely need environmental data scientists, and so on. But how? What are the skills required to actually fill this gap where AI and sustainability come together? Now, the framework that I talked about is the 6 integrated layer framework, where we work on the problem intelligence. Like we define the problem based on the you can see the intensity of the problem. Then we also work on the second component. The second layer is the data intelligence. We collect all the data and make sense of data from various sources, satellite, IoT, or from ESG reports and all. Then we go to the next level. We start doing some analytics, where we integrate different geospatial tools, for example, GIS and machine learning tool, and do some forecasting. Of course, the data is data unless it makes sense. So we also work on the generative intelligence, where we integrate LLM and other models to help interpret the data. And then finally, the overall cover is basically your ethics, privacy, and governance. And this is just another view where everything we do is actually supervised under human in the loop oversight for all these things, because we're not replacing human component from all these activities that we do. Now, how we can operationalize it? So when we propose a framework, but how the framework can be operationalized, that is critical. So now if you see, we start from problem definition and finally we reach to policy and action. So there is a stepwise, you can say, directives that we have created, and that helps, like each step we follow, then we should be able to actually implement the framework in entirety. And as I said, like most of us, we know whether we are from research background or we are from any industry background, we start with the problem definition, whether it's a business problem or it's a research problem. And then we think about like how we can help with the data, and then we go for data acquisition. Since we are talking about sustainability and integrating, of course, there will be a lot of data that we also discussed that may come from satellite images, that may come from climatic related meteorological parameters or some others like spatial data sources. And then we integrate the appropriate AI/ML framework, which will help us to model the data so that we can actually help solve the problem that we have identified in the first step. It is important, as I mentioned, that interpretation is critical, because scientists may come up with models and data and present them, but unless and until that data, that result is interpretable in a way so that the policy makers can easily understand, and then we can translate that into policy. Otherwise, this loop is not going to close. And of course, the governance review will be required so that we make sure the data was properly acquired and there is no privacy leak, or there is no other security issue related to that. Then we selected the right model so that there is no bias and all. And finally, we convert into a decision support system that any policymakers can help and then take the action. Now, the most important part is like everybody, I think most of us realized that, okay, there is a need of that. There will be some new opportunities, as I mentioned, in terms of roles like environmental data scientist and all. What are the key skills that will be required that we will be proposing as a workshop format? So there are a few 6 capability domains we have identified. One is sustainability governance, where we talk about all relevant policies, strategy documents, acts, regulations related to sustainability and AI, and that will help us to govern the entire process. Then, of course, environmental measurement, whether it's scope 1, 2, 3, and so on, life cycle assessment and carbon footprints and so on. Risk and resilience is more like people part of it, how people can adapt to climate risk, heat risk, and flood analysis. Then, of course, data analytics, another is a key domain. AI and geospatial intelligence or you can also consider as a geo AI, where we combine both the capabilities and then we train people to develop a related model, and finally, human and governance skills. This is the capability development model. We have named it artificial intelligence for sustainability problem solving. We know, like we all are, but the structure I wanted to share is we have 7 modules plus a capstone. So we start with foundation, then we talk about the data readiness, then we talk about the LLM workflow, where we discuss more about prompt engineering and then how we can actually use the best of LLM. Then we train on the geospatial and remote sensing, and we prefer to use QGIS and Google Earth Engine because that may not require a lot of money to invest. And there are some other tools like Sentinel imagery analysis and so on. Then we've tried to find out to integrate like what are the appropriate ML or deep learning framework we have available that can be helpful in a particular context. And then we cover the governance and ethics aspect of it so that we are sure that the model that we are talking about, it's not hallucinating, it's not giving irrational results and all. And then we focus on capstone studio, where we talk about specific capstone project, because unless and until we do hands-on, it's very, very difficult. With that, I think I will just, because we have limited time, I'll just give you this workflow view so that you remember, like, okay, these are some of the areas that we have identified. I have mentioned 6 domains where we'll be focusing more on the workshop. And then I believe, like, with this workshop, we should be able to achieve the goal that we want to enable all the sustainability practitioners, AI, in enabling them from the AI perspective. And then we should be collectively able to solve various problems, whether it's in Vietnam, India, US, or any different parts of the world. So with this uh, context I said, with this, I would like to uh, thank everybody for this opportunity. And I believe we'll be open for any question, and Professor Taylor will be also able to answer some of the questions you may have. Thank you very much.